Let's try a second test of this holographic paper with the combination of media that I tried, and I really liked the end result of last night. This is a 5x7 piece. I don't know why I have this pack right here. This is just the way that I bought it. I don't remember where I bought it from. I've heard that, I don't know, I found some of it online. This isn't double-sided, is it? I was going to say, it looks like it was here for a minute. I don't know, 5x7, I'm typically working on, quarter-size page pieces, which I can with this. I got this at Kelly Paper at one point in time as a sample sheet, but let's try the larger format of this. Maybe that's better, or doing one of those kind of elongated, I forgot what you call it, that slimline cards or something like that would be really interesting, because I want to feature a lot of sky, but in this case, let's use it with nature set number 6, or a couple of the images out of that. I don't think I'm using all of it, because I want to, kind of focus on the surface of this paper in many ways, because it is kind of the star of the scene, even with whatever type of imagery you put over the top of it. They're there to kind of, I don't know, bring attention and to kind of shine the spotlight on this paper right here and to really enhance it and show what it can do. In its entirety, it's just, this type of holographic paper is just almost, it's almost like too much, in terms of just the visual volume of it. But I find that when, we kind of tone some of it down and whatnot, in this case I'm thinking about a Northern Light type of thing because I think it's perfect for that. I just really like kind of narrowing down the focus on the visible part of this scene. And I think it makes the parts that are still visible in full kind of that much more effective. Alright, so that being said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stamp this lakeside cabin here, okay? And I'm going to try something different on this one from last night with a technique that I've been doing recently, which is adding some white down, okay? I want this little cabin, I don't know if you can see that there, to kind of be illuminated. I don't want the that iridescent, kind of rainbow type of look to be showing through that. I don't think it would be bad if it did, but when we're kind of playing around and experimenting, it's good to kind of, I don't know, try something new with in all of your different tests. Okay, so that being said, if this is going to go roughly about right here, I don't know, I usually like to use rule of thirds, but if I go this a little bit too low like that, I'm not sure if I'm going to have very much room for foreground. I don't know, maybe I'll bring it up a little bit. So let's say the cabin is going to go right here, okay? If I'm not exact with it, then so be it. I mean, I hardly ever am, but, when I make my impressions, but, one of the biggest things is you don't have to be. So you can see that right in there. See, it's just blocked off that area. It's like this void. And that's where my cabin will be, okay? And we'll try to focus a lot of the attention on the surrounding area. Maybe I'll put a little bit of this kind of foggy haze right around in here. Maybe it will illuminate some of the rocks and shoreline that I have on the stamp as well. So, I don't know, I mean, this is all kind of an experiment. I'm kind of not really in tune with just how much, we'll call it blocking out, I should do on here, okay? So it just looks like that. See that? So I think that white looks pretty good on there. Not just not in terms of a finished product, but in what I'm trying to achieve with it, which is that blocking out of the paper's surface and the paper's characteristics, I guess you can say. Okay, so we'll put a little bit more of that down there. Maybe that, when I stamp out my image right down there, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it'll look like a little bit of fog or something like that, or I don't know, it might just be illumination in general. Okay, so that being said, unlike the scene that I did last night, I'm going to have to work around this white right here, so we're going to be applying some ink down this way and up top here. Could be tricky, I don't know. Just in terms of it's just easier to do these different effects when I don't have to work around something that's already on there. It's just easy just to do it over the whole thing. But let's just see if it's kind of cumbersome working this way. Okay, now I found that 100% cotton balls work pretty good, and I'm going to go in this light dabbing motion right here, okay? Now I'll try to kind of develop a little bit of I don't know what you would call it, a semblance of kind of the lighting structure that we'll have on this page, okay? We'll see how it goes, all right? So you know how Northern Lights are kind of that hanging, kind of curtainy type of thing. You don't have to get it with this application right here, but we are just kind of establishing kind of a loose, general kind of structure in there. Just so you kind of know what you're doing when when we get to the second step in here of this black ink process, which is going to be the removal, the subtractive process on here. I don't know. This process right here, it's goopy, and you're dealing with an oil-based ink on basically what's almost like a mirror, okay? It's going to get messy, but I don't know. I think of it as like messy fun, Think of I don't know, go back to kind of like childhood and kind of like where it's like the messier the better, I think it'll become a much better experience for you. That's what I'm doing, okay? I just assume have my fingers, completely clean and dry, through the entire process of doing anything. But when it gets on there, I just have to kind of, I don't know, get back into the spirit of kind of like childhood exploration and whatnot, and, get inky and, messy and all those kind of fun words, to a kid. Okay. All right. Now let's bring some of this down. See where my light is kind of going right there. I mean, that's not the end result. That's not what I want. But you kind of have to establish a little bit more of this black ink than you think is going to be ideal, because we're going to be rubbing and removing back into it. I don't want to have these curtains kind of hanging down this way as well. But that's not going to be the end of it. I found that I don't know, when I do that and I make those curtainy types of things in there, it looks awful. So I let it set up, and what I did yesterday was I came back in with this again over the top of that, and that kind of mellowed everything out and kind of brought it around, okay? All right, so this is going to be the water down here. I'm kind of debating on whether or not I want to have some kind of shoreline over this way. Maybe I do. Okay, switching up right here. Let's go back to the Brilliance right here. And the white, okay. And I'm going to put a ledge down here, okay. Or a part of that ledge, at least. It brings a little bit more depth in the scene. And when you do, like a shoreline, a near shoreline or something like that, or foliage, okay, in a scenic kind of settings, scenic stamping setting, what you're doing is you're emotionally providing the viewer, us, whoever's looking into the scene, somewhere to stand on, so it kind of makes for this, I would say, kind of an emotional platform or something like that. There's stability to the scene, okay, because you have something to stand on, all right? I don't know, it could be subtle, or in terms of the emotional impact, but I don't know. I think those types of things add up. Plus, it just gives you a little bit more depth of field in the scene. All right, now I have this really narrow thing right down here to work with, so let's see what I can do here. I'll just try to. I'm not going to try to mirror this up here. I think that's going to be too difficult to do because I have this tiny little narrow space right here. This is where kind of a slimline card I think would be better. I just have more room to work, but I don't know. The smaller the card, too, the faster it goes, right? Potentially, I don't know. Smaller and faster doesn't necessarily mean easier. Sometimes just having a little bit more space to work with is easier. But let's see how it goes, okay? You see this kind of this very abstract, I don't know, whatever, composition, whatever you want to call it, that's developing here. All right. Okay. Now, one of the things that I noticed in my, my first version of working on this holographic paper is that the ink right now beads. Okay, I'm pretty sure Brilliance inks are an oil-based ink. It doesn't have like a, I don't know, whatever the ingredients, I don't think, in here. But most pigment inks are oil-based, okay? That's probably the thing that keeps them from drying out too. But there's some faster drying type of whatever, solvent or something in these inks that allows them to dry in here. Okay, so that being said, oil-based, okay. If you're doing oil-based on top of like what's basically almost like a mare, you're going to get this beading, right? Because it's just not absorbing into the surface at all. It's kind of just beading up on the surface. So I found that if you just kind of let this set up a little bit and go on and do your other things, make your impressions and whatnot, when I go back on here, it seems to go on and fill in all those little spots. Like, let me see if I can show you here. See, like right in here, there's a pretty thick layer, but you can see through it, right? It's because that ink is beading up there. Now, I find that, I mean, you can really see it here where I haven't put it on too much, but you can see that texture. It's not just the texture of the cotton. It's just even if I wipe on there, it's not going to fill it in. I'll be wiping it off, basically, the ink. But just letting this set up for a few minutes as I go on and do some other things, I find that when I go back to this and add a little bit more, it goes on and fills in those little gaps a little bit better. All right, so it goes on a little bit smoother. So I wouldn't worry about what it looks like at this point, you know. I did, I guess, a little bit, because I really wanted to get a kind of a thicker coating, and I didn't really like. I like some of the texture to a degree, but I don't like it just throughout the entire piece. Okay, some places I really want to get a little bit darker, but I was able to do that a little bit more, allowing it to set up. Now, I would imagine if I allow it to set up overnight, it would allow me to put on, even more. But I'm anxious to try this out, and finish the scene, so I'm not going to wait overnight and do this. Okay, so you have to go with the paper towel here, and when you start adding in these curtains like this, okay, you're going to get ink all over, so when you go back into these open areas, if you make that streak, and then you go back down here again, you're going to be streaking on color. So what you do is you kind of make a little bit of kind of these streaky motions like this to make those kind of lighty, hanging curtainy types of formations in there. And then you have to kind of just go to a clean area again. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not even one paper towel. It's like a quarter. I don't know. This is what I was using for the whole thing yesterday. It's like a corner, so it's not like you're going to use like paper towel after paper towel or something like that. It just, it's very little. Okay, so let's try this again. I do not have this process down by any means, but let's see how it goes. Okay, I'm trying to find a good kind of angle here for myself, okay? And it's almost like kind of wiping in like soot or something like that. Okay, I need a flatter area, I think. That doesn't look so great. So just kind of find your, there we go, okay. Find your, I don't know, angle and your paper towel handling. Okay, see, I'm just kind of moving it along here a little bit. Let me see if I can get this process down. I'm kind of doing this little swipe motion, okay? I'm not just going like this and up. I'm using a sweeping motion, okay? Like this, okay? Like that. And don't go like that, otherwise you're just going to be removing ink in a straight line. So you're whisking, okay? And this is, oops, you can see where my finger just went right through that. I'll just remove. So that's kind of what I'm going after right there. You can go a little bit more. Go more than what you think is ideal, okay? Because we're going to go back in here and just tone right back over, these areas again, okay? Just to kind of smooth them out a little bit. See, every time I hold this right here, I'm removing ink right here. That's how wet this is. I did find that the ones I did yesterday, I can touch it and it doesn't come off, It's still wet, yeah, but it's dry just overnight. It's not even been 24 hours and it's already setting up. But I would imagine, we're talking about a week to probably completely dry. I don't know, it just depends on where you are. It might even take longer depending on the temperature of, the interior of your location, relative humidity. Alright, so kind of coming around. It's real smudgy right here, but remember we can kind of wipe that off. But see that right there? I kind of want a little bit more of like a hanging kind of streakiness though to it. Okay. You can kind of wipe off more in certain areas. All right, those are the top part of that curtain. Now I'll come down below and I'll do the same. I'm finding that I'm getting the feel of it a little bit more. I think I'm touching it less. Okay, I'm using less pressure on my swipe, so I'm kind of getting the feel of it. Okay. You got to get used to kind of just barely touching something and then adding that back in there. It's very subject to removal. So, and then just see if you want it to remove more, then just make multiple swipes as he's using harder pressure, I think. So you can come in here and kind of clear out the interior. Oops, that didn't work. Let me kind of clean that up a little bit. With every swipe, I'm learning something new, literally. Okay, so let me see. I came in there and removed too much. When I was going like this, I was pushing like this band of ink on the surface. I didn't realize that. Okay. As you kind of get used to it, you get a little bit more confidence. Now remember, with any of this, I mean, I can just wipe off this whole thing and start over if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that, but, if you take off just too much, just go back in and just tone right back into it, okay? That's the beauty of it. The thing that makes it more kind of temperamental or particular in terms of your ink applications here and permanence is also the thing that makes it the most forgiving of, different types of surfaces. So, when we're talking about a mirrored surface right here, it is very, very forgiving. you can just start over again if you want to. You can stamp out your whole scene, finish everything, and if you don't like it, you can just wipe it right off. It is like working on foil, you know, or a mirror. I would say that it's not really so much like working on glass, but it's kind of like working on, if you were working on like plexiglass or something like that, you know, like a plastic glass, or a plastic type of surface, you know, a real super smooth plastic surface, I would say. That's what it certainly kind of reminds me of, or what I think of when I'm doing that. I haven't stamped on plastic before, but this is what I would imagine it would kind of feel like. Okay, so there's our curtains right there. Again, that's not really what I want, you know, with the end result. But, you know, we're going to go back in and tone into that. It's too loud right now, like that, okay? All right, so, let's go and put that down here. Okay, I don't have too much room here, but let's see what we can do down here. I don't know if it's in my imagination, but it kind of feels to me like I can feel the ink setting up slightly. Like it feels like it comes off a little bit. It's a little bit more fixed down here, having sat, you know, just a few minutes. Nothing big, but just ever so slightly. But I don't know. I can't really tell for sure. I mean, it still comes off very easily, though. Okay, I'm getting into some really thick areas, and I didn't leave very much of a clearing of ink, so I'm really spreading around a lot of that ink down there. Okay. Okay, now that looks like a big hot mess, as they'd call it, right there, okay. But that's kind of fine with me, I think. I'm not super confident, but, you know, it's not like this is like, to me, it's like an experiment, so I'm not fearful. Of course you want everything to come out. I do too, of all my pieces, you know. But I'm not really sure. So the things that's going through in my head right now is I'm wondering if I should do some splatter painting of some additional ink in here first. I think I'm going to stamp my imagery. I think I'm just going to go for the imagery right now. And I'll add in some Dr. Martens later. You see, the thing about the Dr. Martens right here, when I splatter paint over the top of this, it adds another layer in here. So it kind of pushes whatever I've laid down a little bit backward, okay? So that if there's something that I don't like about a certain area, or I think it's kind of a weakness, like, you know, my horrible kind of swiping in here, it gets subdued in terms of from a visual perspective. So you just layer things over the front of it, have things closer to us, and that makes anything that's already down there farther away visually. Okay, so you know, I mean that's with anything. Sometimes you can turn a weakness into a strength that way too. Instead of something being kind of in the forefront, it becomes kind of a secondary character. All right, I'm talking about the swiping, not the paper in general. Okay, so let's see how this one goes right here. There's the lakeside cabin, and it's right here. I'm going to put that right in here. I have no idea how that white will work out, but we shall see. With this pigment ink, it's pretty thick, so you want to give good pressure, but you don't want to squash things too much. adequate. I'm pressing pretty hard, okay? Sometimes I get a little bit, I don't know, I'm a little bit too careful occasionally on the metallics, and then, like yesterday, I was stamping a tree, the spruce tree, and I lifted it up, and I didn't put enough pressure on the bottom, but I don't know, there's always remedies for anything in scenic stamping, so that's good. Okay, so there that cabin is. It is fairly well defined. See that, I put it in the white so it doesn't have all that, shimmery substance shining right through. And I think there's a little bit too much glow in the background like that. So you just come in, I'll just come in right over the top of it with some more black ink. Okay, so I think that looks pretty decent. Okay. Let's go with the ledge in the foreground. Okay. I think the white worked out pretty good. What do you think? Like that. We're going to bring all this together. I think it looks, at this point in time, it still looks pretty sketchy as far as a finished piece. I'm looking at, I'm pretty used to looking at, works in progress, but anytime you're kind of dealing with something really new and kind of uncertain, there's always a kind of that question mark of, first of all, what do you do next, but also how it's going to look in terms of the very process of that you're working in. But experiment a lot, it'll be a lot of fun for you. It's fun for me. Okay, here's the ledge right there. It's kind of coming together, I think, I hate this area in here right now. That's why I have to come back into it and add some additional tones in there. Okay, I'm going to put some trees in here, but I think that'll definitely be something that I do later because I want to go in and kind of add, some additional ink in here. And let's see if I can bring everything together. Now that I know where all of my, well, not all of my objects, but the main objects are going to go, let's go in here and kind of refine our shading right in here now. Yeah, now see, what I was mentioning before, I do feel that I can get a much darker and flatter coverage of ink right in here. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, it's not super flat, but that's pretty black right there. Where over here, it's beading. You see what I mean? So it just comes to show you that. I mean, it just in a few minutes. I mean, this ink it's setting up. Okay, it's designed to do that. Like I said, though, it's not going to dry completely or anything like that, which is a good thing because I want to be able to manipulate it if I need to. But it is setting up, okay? Now, this isn't just plain pigment ink, okay? It's Brilliance. It's designed to dry on the non-porous surfaces. I get some people saying, trying to mix and match, which you can do with most techniques. I usually use dye-based inks, and you can just use whatever brand you want, okay? Or if you're using just a general pigment ink, but when you're working on specialty types of papers like this, you really need kind of a specialty ink, so be it I don't know, impressions, like stays on, or you can do embossing or something like that. I'm talking about not this technique of applying the inks like this, but and blending them around. But if you just want, just some general impressions to be able to stick on this type of non-porous surface, like any type of foil. Okay, so subduing the backing of those trees a little bit. Oops. I think I went a little bit heavy right there. I didn't want that degree of application, but that's what I have, so be it, you know. Okay, now I think I'm going to try to narrow. That is really loud still. Let me try to knock some of this down right here. I'm going to put, so in some of the areas, I'm going for more of an opaque black, okay? And in some areas, I'm just kind of applying it down to put like a kind of a translucent layer, meaning you can still see through it in some of the areas, just to subdue that super loud, exciting look, you know. I want it pretty exciting, but I don't want it, I guess, overpowering, maybe, uh, in a negative way, you know. Okay, so maybe I'll do the curtains on the sides a little bit darker. It's almost like putting like some soot over it. That's almost what it feels like. It feels like, you know, that feels like, looks like soot or something like that. All right. So it's kind of focusing a little bit more over here. Okay, let's bring this down here a little bit too. And then we'll do a little bit in the water as well, maybe. Okay, coming in here. See, I'm able to kind of transition things a little bit more too than, you know, kind of doing that subtractive wiping technique. See, everywhere I put my finger, I leave kind of a complete fingerprint because it's lifting right off, okay? So you just kind of have to fill in. Maybe I should do that at the end. I'll do all my fingerprint fill-in work later on. Okay. So see, that's okay. I don't like that big open area like that. Let's see. It's like a big, I don't know. I don't like that big shape. I need to break it up a little bit. Like so. Maybe I'll just get rid of that in general. Like that. I think that looks better. What do you think? I'm just kind of taking off a little bit at a time. It's like an oily, sooty feel or mess. It's kind of a sooty mess in not a great way, but kind of in the end, it's kind of, you know, it kind of becomes fun when it starts to kind of reveal itself in terms of, you know, the finished piece. But believe me, during the whole process right here, it feels, I don't know, it's just a very different kind of different process right here dealing with this. But I think it's pretty fun and worth it. Let's go ahead and get rid of that line right there too. All right, so I don't want to get rid of my all right. As I'm saying that, it occurs to me, I think I can come in here with the pine row in the background. All right, I'm going to go for it. Let's see if this works right here. Take off my leaves. Let's see. This is tack and peel on here, by the way, for unmounted stamps, but I'm using my cling foam ones right here. All right, this is what I'm going to try with my pine row. I'm going to try to get a second impression with that. That's much lighter than the first, okay? Alright, so let's test this out here. I don't know if I can because this ink is so thick. Alright, so if I stamp that out like that, and if I go for a second impression like that, will it stamp out dark enough? Okay, I stamped it off once, okay. I think there's still quite a bit of ink on there, though. I might need to go twice. Okay. I stamped it off twice. Okay, now it's a much lighter version, right? Can you see that? See it right there? Okay, now I'm going to transition this, okay, from dry down here. Okay. And I'm going about midway up. I'm taking off quite a bit off the bottom, and as I go up, I'm taking off less ink, okay? Now remember, this will be the third impression anyway, okay? And as I stamp this down here, so see, by wiping off a lot of that ink down here, it's not going to interfere with the, the silhouette of lakeside cabin trees. Hopefully, I don't know. Let's test it out and see. Okay, and I think I need to use some pretty good pressure on here. I'm just hoping I didn't take off too much ink. But I don't want it so dark either, so I don't know. Let's see how this goes. Okay, I can barely see that. Okay. See that right in there? You can't really see it. Alright. No problem. Inked up. One impression. Okay. Let's go for the second impression instead. Wiping off the bottom part, like that, like so. Transition up. I'm used to doing this with dye-based. I'm a lot better at doing that with dye-based inks than with pigment, like super thick pigment ink, so I'm never quite sure if I'm removing enough or too much, these thick inks like that. Okay. A little better like that, okay. And I'll use another one over here. In some ways, it's still a kind of a big sooty looking mess, but like I said, you kind of utilize that. Not the mess aspect, but there's certain characteristics of what you're creating with, whatever impressions or techniques you're using. Okay, let's come over here. I don't want to get this in that cabin, but I think I've wiped off enough of that ink. Well, I'll wipe off a little bit more. And we'll come over this way. Okay. I'm kind of stamping it a little bit above the cabin, too, so I don't think I went right into the cabin rooftop. Okay, alright. That's not too bad right there. It's a little bit better like that. Okay. And I think this area down here is kind of a weak spot in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize that same technique, okay? And we'll just flip the trees, flip the scene upside down, and we'll come in this way, and we'll get some tree formations within that water space to represent reflections. Okay. And I'm not going for an exact mirror copy. If I did, it would be over this way, but that's not going to serve what I'm going for, so I just want to get a little bit of the spirit of that reflection right down in this way, like so. Okay. Like that. Alright. There's going to be other things over the top of this, so this is where, I don't know, kind of playing around, I'm able to utilize some different processes, that I do with other media So it's good to be able to bring kind of versions of those techniques that you really like to use, but into a different medium, or different combinations of media. So this is just one of those kind of fundamental things. The thing that's interesting about this is when I come in with this into this black ink, it's removing the ink in this area, like that. So I guess you can do one of those things like a soot card. You can put a bunch of ink down and then take a dry stamp, stamp into it, and take it off, and it'll remove ink. Maybe that's the next process that I'll try with this type of either metallic, just in general metallic papers, or with this holographic one. We'll do some reverse impressions on it and see how that works out. Okay, so we have that in there, and things are still looking like a sooty mess here. So let's go in and kind of blend things in a little bit more. So again, okay. Always just going back in and kind of refining and reblending and whatnot, so on and so forth. It's like improvisation, You just have to kind of respond to kind of what's happening. And it doesn't have to be kind of a hard process of, kind of decision making. Just in general, I go back to this. You know what I mean? So if in doubt, just add more black, okay? All right? All right. Gosh, any little touch really just scratches out all that ink on the surface right now. Like I said, if I waited, right now would be a good time to kind of, allow the process to kind of dry and set up a little bit more. But who wants to do that when you're stamping, right? I don't know, if you're mass producing a bunch of these, maybe it'd be a good idea. Okay, so we have that right there. All right, let's go in and add some of our different textures in here. All right, do I do that right now, or do I want to add in my pine trees? Let's just go in. Let's just add the imagery right now. All right, pine, black, different types of pressures, don't squash your tip like that, Most of the mass of the image is down below, so kind of just stamp impression pressure 101. Put a little bit more pressure towards the area where there's the most amount of surface area, okay? And if there's an amount of the stamp with very little surface area, apply even pressure, but don't press too hard on it, just like the reeds or something like that of the set. Yeah, okay, that tree right there, it really removed ink. All right, that's irritating. I have a little piece of lint or hair or something like that on the stamp. I couldn't see. Yeah, there it is. Get off of there. You can barely see it on there, though. Stamping with big goopy ink. With these pigment ink pads. I'm going to do another one right here. It's really interesting because when I stamp into that black there, it's part impression, part removal, part transfer, part removal of ink. You know, because that ink is very, very wet. Okay. All right. So I have this foreground like that. All right. I've got a lot of space up here. I'm kind of tempted to use another stamp up there. You know, maybe the overhanging tree branch or something like that. Okay, let's go in here. Closing in again. Filling in, getting a little bit of a more solid kind of vignette around here. Closing in up here too. Okay. It's really hard to kind of get the, well, I don't know about really hard, but there's somewhat of an uncertainty because the paper changes, you know, colors depending on what angle you're using it. So I'm kind of responding. So when I look at it like one way, let's say there's a bunch of blue right here, it looks really dark. So, you know, or some area looks really light if I have it like that. So I think I need to close in a little bit more and make it lighter. But then when you go like that, it's really dark, you know. So it's kind of hard to kind of assess, you know. So that being said, I mean, you don't have to do things really perfectly because it's, you know, the characteristic of the surface is different depending on the angle that you're holding the card at. Okay, closing in a little bit more. All right, now I think this is going to bring this piece together a lot more. Hopefully it will. It did seem to do that yesterday, last night. Okay, let's make some space here and go with the Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. Oh, let's mix this up a little bit. Get it the right consistency. Bleed Proof White, you really have to add water to it periodically to put the paint back into solution. It's a really beautiful paint. It's the matter in it is so fine. It just mixes up so nicely. Okay. You want it about the consistency of syrup, I would say, or something like that. That's what I generally think about when I'm using it. You don't have to get it perfect, but, you know, just in general, maybe not super, super thick or super, super thin, okay? I would try to stay away from the extremes. If it's really super thin, it might lose a little bit of opacity too. I'm not really sure, you know, because I usually get it to that like syrup consistency. But I don't know. Maybe if you want, you know, some of the textures, if this is the way you're using it, to be a little bit more translucent, you know, and not so stark white, then you know, adjust accordingly. Okay, so let's go like this. And all right, now's the time. I have to really kind of decide if I have this set the way I want it to be. I think it's fine. I'm really tempted to stamp like white or silver trees in this scene. I think that might be kind of an interesting thing to do. Okay. See all that white paint texture? Let's make this snow. I'll do it over the whole thing. Trying not to have my toothbrush right directly over my scene, so in case there's a drip that comes out, I'm generally pretty careful about that. But occasionally I'll get a drip. If it was on dye-based cardstock and my inks are dry, I can just kind of rub it right off. But on this one, if I have to rub off some big blob of white paint, I'm going to be wiping off all that black that's underneath it. Now, if you just add too much of this white paint, this Dr. Martens dries pretty fast. It'll be drying on wet, ink right in there. But if you just need to go over some of it, it's like, oh my god, I added way too much. Then just, blot some, allow it to dry, and then just blot some of that black brilliance right over the top of it again. All right, I think that is enough. I added a little bit more, well, maybe quite a bit more than what I often do, but I think that that texture on here is really kind of helping to, I don't know, you kind of unify the piece a little bit like that. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. This area in the background right there, I think it's a little bit weak. I think in the future, I think I would just do that glow coming up from the bottom and not have this darker area in here, and I think that would be a stronger kind of statement right in here. But okay, so in terms of a process and technique here, I think the white worked pretty well in terms of just, you know, subduing that whole area right in there. Okay, so it's not just like a window, something, that it gives that cabin some visual mass, being that the colors aren't just showing right directly through it, right? The cabin is a volume within this space as opposed to an outline, okay? So just adding it down there, and that was really easy. And it's also like on the rocks right here, that white, so it's not reflecting off of it. So you just have it in the sky and in the reflection in the water, and I think that's, that works fairly well. So I think that's something that we can employ in the future, and also on these rocks down here. Um, I think it picks up a little bit of that color, but it still gives mass and body to those rocks like that. So, oh, pretty interesting. Let me try something now too. Um, let's add a couple other things in here. I was thinking about some additional texture. Okay, and I wouldn't do this if I didn't have the stamps right here, right in front of me, but um, I have this little tiny rocks texture stamp right here. Let's straighten it out a little bit. Okay, and let's get down here in the water. it kind of makes the water a little bit more shallow. You know, the rocks are kind of, you know, visible like that, but it's okay. And you can, I don't know if you can see that, where I stamped it in the darker area like that, it removed some of that ink off the top of the rocks. See those little rocks in there? So that, I don't know, as far as the process, I think that looks pretty good. And let's go with our leaves, our overhanging leaves right here. I need to use this with the tack and peel. Okay. All right. Let's see if this applies, okay? You're stamping wet into wet. Let's see how much I remove as opposed to applying with this stamp. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like I said, it kind of leaves a little bit of an outline. It probably depends on how wet my ink pad is too. Okay. It's pretty interesting in terms of an effect, though. Okay, so let's take a look up here. See that? See how it kind of removes? It's like the perimeter. It kind of created a little bit of a perimeter around those leaves like that. So see, right here, it's just a positive impression, but where you come up here, it's like it creates that outline around the impression, like that. It wouldn't happen if I allowed this to set up and if I did this tomorrow, but I think that looks fairly interesting in terms of a look. It's almost like it's, I don't know, it doesn't look like it's embossed, but I don't know, it does look, I don't know, it's different. Okay, here, just a little refinement impression right here. I can't see it a lot in here because I have that branch going into the darker area, so let me bring this branch into the lighter area so we can see a little bit more. Alright, so there we go. That's a little bit better right here. And it kind of pushes back that background a little bit too, so yeah, something like that. Alright, so anyway, just another way, a potential way to use that paper, holographic paper, if you have some of this that's been sitting on your shelf for quite a while. I don't know, it's pretty fun to play around with, and I like these different color changes and the, I don't know, whatever you call it, user involvement in terms of checking it out like that. I mean, it's dynamic enough with the things like Brilliance pads. I mean, Brilliance, starter and papers, sorry. The iridescent styles of papers, the metallic papers, when you hold them at different angles, it looks different. But there's nothing that looks more different than this holographic paper as far as I know. The interactive type of, I don't know, aspect of this. That's the word I was looking for. I don't know, it's just so different and, I don't know, to me kind of interesting. I don't know that this scene right here, you know, if I've done it, you know, terribly effective or whatnot, but it's just a kind of an experiment. And I don't know, I learned a couple more things that we can utilize in future scenes. I think a moon or something like that, you know, might be kind of interesting and to kind of illuminate it. But you know how you look in the night sky sometimes and there's that little kind of iridescence, you know, in certain areas, Or maybe you can play around some sort of rainbow type of situation, or maybe a moonbow would be more effective if you want to kind of darken up some areas like that, like around some waterfalls and the misting in the air. That might be kind of interesting too. So, all right. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the scene and the entire process. It's a goopy mess. Everything's all covered with, Brilliance thick black ink and everything like that. I think my fingers aren't too bad, considering, but I don't know, just see that as part of the fun of the process, and I think you'll get into it a little bit more than getting frustrated about, oh my god, I'm leaving fingerprints everywhere, just have some fun with it. Okay, thanks again for watching.